then Wednesday is Juneteenth, and later today, the city of Boston will be holding a flag-raising ceremony at City Hall. On Saturday, there was a celebration in Hyde Park where a large crowd came out for the family-friendly event. Juneteenth marks the day the final people enslaved in the U.S. learned they had been freed. It is sometimes called the nation's second Independence Day. Joining me now is Dr. Noelle Trent. She is the president of the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket, and you're going to be the keynote speaker at today's flag-raising ceremony. So thanks so much for coming on The Mix.
Well, thank you for having me.
If you can, just give us a little bit more context about the holiday. It's a newer holiday.
It is a newer holiday. It became a federal holiday in 2021. Massachusetts did precede the federal government by making it a federal state holiday in 2020. Now, in June 1865, Union troops were in Galveston, Texas, and on June 19th, General Gordon Granger, like many Union generals were doing at the time, as they entered different Confederate spaces and were claiming them for the Union Army, would read the Emancipation Proclamation and let the enslaved people in those areas know that they were now free. And so this happens after Robert E. Lee's surrender to the Union Army in April of '65. And so this is essentially the last group of enslaved people to hear this official announcement. Now, the holiday itself really has its roots in Texas, but it has become this massive national holiday to commemorate all the different emancipation days across the country, because different states and territories at different times in our country's history were emancipating or freeing enslaved people. So it's become this moment of celebration and jubilation around the end of slavery and remembering this time in our nation's history.
Doctor, tell us about your current exhibit. It's called the Emancipation Proclamation, a Pragmatic Compromise.
Yes, so this exhibit has been up in the museum, and we really focus on Boston's role in this fight for abolition, particularly emancipation, looking at some of the radical abolitionists, the different conversations that happened. And Boston was really crucial in that. This space was a hub for abolition throughout our country's history. And so if you were anybody in the abolition movement, you had to come through Boston to make a national impact. And that's something we should have a lot of pride in.
How do you hope Bostonians celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, the first I hope is that they really lean into the idea of reflecting on this national sort of emancipation days. But the other thing that I want people to realize is that the legacy of Juneteenth is much larger than a single day or a single act. Coretta Scott King has a wonderful quote where she says, "Freedom isn't free, you have to win it with every generation." Juneteenth happened over 150 years ago, but we're still fighting for those equities and for freedom. And so as we celebrate Juneteenth, we absolutely should stop, enjoy the celebration, but we should also remember that there is still a lot more work to do. And so we want to take a moment on Wednesday to pause, to have a great party, have a great time, but remember on the 20th that we got to get back to the good work of fighting for freedom for all people.
If people want to come and visit the museums, how can they do that, and what can they expect during a visit?
Well, you know, we have two sites, our site on Beacon Hill here in Boston and in Nantucket. Both sites are open 10 to 4. If you visit the Boston site, you're going to be able to tour the African Meeting House. You can also do the Black Heritage Tour, which the National Park Service does, and you'll come and be able to see the power of the space, why it was so important, and its proximity to our State House and the halls of power here in Massachusetts. For Juneteenth, we have holiday celebrations happening on both campuses. We will have a drum circle. We'll have a concert that evening at our Boston campus. And if people want to venture out to Nantucket to escape the heat, we'll have a block party that day from 10 to 4.
Perfect summer day trip right there. All right, Dr. Noelle Trent, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.